Okay, so we haven't quite got all of the ingredients here, so we're going to go off out into the garden and go and pick a few fresh ones as well. So we're off out down to the garden to go and get some rosemary, bay leaf, some garlic, and some thyme. So we're just going to go down to the end of the garden. It's down here. It's a long way. Here's the pond. Just dug that out myself. It's got some koi carp in it now as well. It's got some kingfishers. There's a stork that comes by. It's really nice. Now we have to cross the dried up stream, which is we'll be there in a minute. Oh, this for some garlic. Yeah, and then we have to go across the moors a little bit as well. We've got some moors in the garden as well. It's a nice view, you can see Liverpool from here. This is the other pond that I built. Well, I had to dig them both out. Did it all with a small spoon. This is our garlic, for a nice chunky one. Looks more like a spring onion. It's had a bit of a rough winter, there's not a lot left on it. Lovely nice little bit of bay leaf as well, while we're here. So we're going to dice the onions, so you need a nice small knife, lots of lines in the top, turn it sideways, we're going to cut once through it that way, and then we're going to go this way, and that gives us a nice small dice, and that means we get lots of flavour out of the onions when they fry off in the pan. Okay, so this is our fresh garlic. Looks a little bit like a spring onion, but it's just been picked out of the garden, so there's no bulb on the bottom of it yet, because it'll get that in winter. So we're going to get rid of the bottom. We're going to use the bottom half of this for the bolognese, and then the green bit we're going to use for the garlic bread afterwards. So we'll have a nice green garlic paste that goes on top of the garlic bread. It's a little bit different. So just take off the dry bits off the outside. Obviously we've already given it a bit of a wash because it's just come out of the ground, and it's going to get blended into the sauce anyway, so there's no point in this being finely chopped or anything. We just cut it up, so just like a spring onion, but that smells like garlic, except it's... Okay, so next is the celery, which is a key ingredient. It's not bolognese unless it's got celery in it. So we're just going to chop this up. It's got strings in it, so when you crack a piece of celery, you can peel all the strings out of it. Yeah, something like that. So we want to make sure that they're all cut up nice and small, because if you cut your celery up and it's in large pieces, you'll have those strings floating around in your bolognese sauce. So we don't want that. So chop them up nice and small. So we're using some cherry plum tomatoes. We're going to cut all these in half. They're going to go into the sauce as well. It just gives it a little bit of a fresh tomato flavour. Using tinned tomatoes, it's fine, but if you put fresh tomatoes in it as well, you just get that sort of real authentic Italian sort of flavour out of it. If you ever have bolognese in Italy, they use fresh tomatoes as well, and it's like, you can just tell the difference. So we're going to put them in. So our hot pan, we turn the heat right up on it, check it's hot, it's hot. So we've got a little bit of the olive oil in there, so make sure that's all coated in the bottom of the pan. we're going to heat this pan up till it's at smoke point. So it's been on for a little while already. The oil's gone really nice and thin now. But just as you start to see a little bit of smoke coming off it, that's just at the point where we're going to add the onions. So we're going to fry these off until they're brown. So we're going to add pepper to this. So loads of black pepper that goes into it. Pepper needs adding to it early because it needs cooking out. So you get all the flavour out of it the longer it's in there. Can't add it at the end really. Well, you can, but it doesn't work the same. So what I'm doing here is I'm going to fry off all of the onions separate, and I'm going to add them to this pan. We're going to make a sauce in this pan, and then we're going to add all the other ingredients and into this afterwards, and fry it all off bit by bit so that we get it all brown before it goes into the sauce. So the onions have started to brown. We're going to take it a little bit further and get it a little bit browner. The more brown that you get the vegetables, the more flavour you get in it, so that's the difference between cowboys and chefs basically. So the onions have started to brown nicely. We're going to take it a little bit further than that. The more flavour that you get out of the onions is down to how brown they are, so we get it a little bit browner, and that's where all the flavour comes from for your sauce. The more you put in. So the onions have started browning nicely. We're going to take it a little bit further than this. The more brown that you get the onions, the more flavour you get in your sauce, so that's the difference between cooks and chefs basically. So there's no cowboys around here. Famous last words. So we're going to get this pan hot again. We're going to add some olive oil to it again. Just oh no, that's not olive oil. It's that one. Yep. And then we're going to put the carrots and the celery in this time. So we'll fry that off until that goes brown as well. Same rules. So as we can see, the carrots and the onions, celery and garlic all browned off nicely. I'm going to add that to this pan now. So now we've added the tomatoes. We're going to have a glug of olive oil again, and we're going to put some crystal sea salt into this one. And we're just going to wilt the tomatoes down before they go into the sauce. So we're going to mix all this, and we're going to add the tin tomatoes to this in just a sec. So we've got our Italian chopped tomatoes, nice and red these ones, so always try and get the Italian ones, always a little bit better. It's worth paying a little bit extra for it as well. So we've added 2 tins of tomatoes to this. We're going to add some water to it as well. So we're going to fill up 1 tin with water, and then add that to the sauce as well. Give it a nice mix, and then we're going to cook this for about an hour, and then we're going to blend it and make a nice smooth sauce. We're not going to add the meat to it until after it's blended. So tomatoes are nicely wilted, they're going in. So adding to this sauce, we're going to put the tomato stock cube into it. And we're going to put, can't put the bay leaf in because that has to go in afterwards, because otherwise it'll get blended up into it. We don't want that. And we're going to put basil and oregano into it as well. So the amount of basil, you want quite a lot. This is going to serve about 6 to 8 people. So more. And oregano. This is the thing that makes it taste like Bolognese the most. So that was about a fifth. Yeah, a fifth of a tub. And that's, well, I haven't got any more anyway, so that'll have to do it. So, because of strict rationing at the moment, we haven't been able to get hold of any tomato puree. So if you've got tomato puree, put it in. We managed to get sun-dried tomato puree, which isn't going to add anything to the colour, because normally you'd put tomato puree in to make it a nice rich red, and it would absorb some of the liquid as well, so you don't get that orange water at the bottom of your bowl. That one-ended. So I'm going to put sun-dried tomato into it, because at least it'll give it some more flavour. Yeah, it's done a terrible job. Yeah, it's better than nothing. And as if by magic, the wife has just come home with essential supplies and got some tomato puree. That's not tomato puree. Yeah, so she's managed to bring this back from her mum. She only had to swap it for 4 toilet rolls and 3 hand sanitisers and 2 face masks. Yeah. So while this is simmering, we'll give it a nice stir every now and then. And then we're going to get the meat sorted. So we're going to fry off the mince in a pan, and then we're going to add the wine to it and the herbs. So the chopped rosemary is going to go into the meat with the wine, but we're going to cook the wine first, then we're going to put the thyme and the stems from the rosemary into that, so that will infuse the thyme and the rosemary into it, just because it's the best way of doing it. About half a bottle of wine. So we've got Aberdeen Angus minced beef. It's 10% fat. You want it between 10 and 15% fat, because you need a certain amount in there for the flavour. If it's too lean, it doesn't break up properly and it ends up looking like worms. So you want something that's got 10 to 15%. 20% is just too much. So we're going to get the pan red hot again. There's no oil in it this time, because obviously there's some fat in the meat. So we're going to get the pan all the way up until smoking point. So it's hotter than when it's got oil in it, and it should brown the mince straight away as soon as it goes in. And then we've got our wine and herbs in there, which is now on. So we'll boil it. It'll take some of the flavour. We don't want to reduce it too much, because we want to put it in with the meat afterwards as well. We just want it to take on the flavour of the mint herbs. So chop it up a little bit. Don't want to move it around too much, because otherwise it won't brown. So leave it in the same place for a little while. Once it's browned, turn it, let it brown again, turn it, let it brown again. We want to get as much brown on it as possible before it starts letting all the water out. Then at this stage as well, we're going to add the rosemary. The KP started bitching that I've used all the pans. Just feed her wine. So we're getting the mince nicely browned. We've chopped it all up nicely. We've tried not to make too much of a mess, but you know. So we're going to pour the wine out of here now that it's all got the flavour infused into it. That puts all the fat all over the floor and the kitchen and on the walls, so obviously someone's got to clean that. Yeah, and managed to drop all of the rosemary in, get that back out. So the wine is now in the meat and the herbs are left, so we're going to bin the herbs, and then we're going to put the wine and the meat back in the pan. So you've got the wine and the red meat in there. There's an interesting thing that the enzymes in red wine actually break down the collagen and the proteins in the meat, so it makes it all break down and go nice and soft. So we're going to leave that in there. We're going to simmer it gently. We're going to leave it all the way to the point where there's hardly any wine left, and the meat's absorbed most of it and the rest of it's evaporated off. So the bay leaf can go in with the red meat here. That'll flavour that nicely. It's a fresh bay leaf, so it's got tons of flavour in it, so normally you'd use a smaller one, but because we're doing it for like 6 to 8 people, one big one's fine. Into the meat we're going to pour one of these rich beef stock pots as well. We're going to go straight in there, and then that'll give it some nice colour as well. and that'll absorb into the meat as well. So we're going to leave these two cooking for about half an hour, so I'm going to periodically stir this one. This one is just going to leave to simmer in its own juices. We're going to blend this, and then we're going to add this to it, and then it's going to go in the oven for about 3 hours. So now the beef mince has absorbed all of the red wine, and the rest of it's evaporated. That's all ready, it's nice and dark, and then we're going to blend this and add the two together. So we're going to put that in an oven-proof dish, put a lid on it, and then we're going to cook it in the oven like a ragu for about 3 hours. So it's going in the oven at about 140. So we'll just leave it cooking in the oven for about 3 hours, yeah. So now that the bolognese has been in the oven for 3 hours, it should be nearly done. So we're going to start getting ready with our cheese sauce, which is bechamel. So we're going to put the butter in the pan. Turn the pan on. We're going to get some milk in another pan, turn that on, get that nice and hot. We're going to put bay leaf into that as well, and that means back down the garlic. And we're using gluten-free flour. We've got a white mix, gluten-free flour. Obviously, you know, gluten-free is using the flour, but the process is the same. So now that the got bay leaf, we're warming the milk up, so we want to use hot milk for this. Now that the butter is melted, we're going to add some flour to that, and then mix it, and then it gets to a sandy texture. Yeah, so this is now our roux. So we're going to cook this until it changes slightly. It'll go a little bit crunchier, and it'll have a smell like biscuits. So obviously it's butter and flour. When the flour's cooked, it'll smell like a biscuit. And it'll change its texture a little bit as well. But this is different flour as well. It's not normal flour. So now that our roux is starting to look a little bit more cooked, it's not got any gluten in this, so it's going to look very different to what yours might be if yours is made with normal flour. So we're going to add a little bit of water, milk to that now that it's hot, just a touch. So at this stage, we're just adding the milk to the roux, and what we do is like this is how we make a sauce without any lumps in it, because you're just thinning it down constantly. So if you put too much milk in at once, you'll end up with a lumpy sauce. So you just keep on adding a little bit of milk, stir it in every time until you're at sauce consistency. So it's now at this consistency, so it's not going to take too much more milk at that point, so just ease off on it, don't put too much in at a time, and then we'll show you how thick you want it. So now that it's reached this consistency, where it's a bit runny, so that it'll spread out on the top of the lasagna, we're going to add some cheese, some salt and pepper, and a little bit of English mustard. So for this we're using Parmesan. You grate it on the fine side of the grater, and there's salt and pepper. So we're going to mix it all in, and that's your cheese sauce that you're going to put on top of lasagna. So the bolognese is now out of the oven. So we're just going to get a nice lasagna dish. We're going to ladle some lasagna into the bottom. We're going to layer it up. We're going to put the bechamel on the top, and then we're going to top it with some cheese, stick it straight in the oven, and then dinner's ready. So now that the bechamel's finished and it's off the heat, so turn it off the heat, I'm going to put 1 egg yolk into it. That'll just help it glaze under in the oven, so it'll go nice and brown.